Hello, everybody. I am still in Chicago, so sound quality still might sound a little bit different than normal, but I'm flying back to Los Angeles in a few days, and hopefully I can record next week's episode a little bit early, so the audio can sound a little bit cleaner. But here we go. This past week, I wrote about thinking globally but acting locally, a two-pronged strategy for distributing your movies. And it comes out of the scenario that we've all been conditioned to do as independent filmmakers. It's win big at a festival, get your film purchased for a wide theatrical release, and then hopefully become a household name as an up-and-coming director. Essentially, something else that I wrote on social media, which was we've been conditioned to think as long as we take care of the art, somebody else will take care of the business and we'll never have to worry again. But what that's turned into is we take care of the art. Somebody tries to steal the art, control the art, and then make it even more difficult to make more of it. Because I think something to realize is as time goes on and tech companies buy larger studios, they don't see movies are not important anymore. TV shows aren't important. They're not art. They are content. They are product. They're a way to get people onto whatever platform, be it Amazon, and keep you on there and get you to buy more stuff. Obviously, Netflix, their business model is a little bit different than in Amazon's, but still they want to have as much stuff on there so they can keep you on the platform as long as possible. Again, we are the product, not the customer. Again, we are the product. We are no longer the consumer or the audience. So what do you do? How do you fight back against that? Because again, we've been conditioned to think the only way for us to ever break through is either win big at a festival or sell it to a streamer, that we have no agency, no control. But that's not true. And I think the way through is by doing a two-pronged strategy, which is, first of all, considering outside the US, remembering that cinema now is a global structure, not just a local one. The United States, while it's still dominant, its dominance is growing less and less, primarily because of the way that we treat the art form and how we treat the people that make it. But even inside the US, there is still something to be said about local community. I know that local theater gets a bad rap, but think of it that way. There are tons of theaters, especially in ones that aren't big film markets, like outside of New York and Los Angeles and even Chicago. But even inside of those, there are lots of small theaters that are either struggling or just making it by. And you can call them and ask, hey, I have a movie. How much would it be to put that movie in your theater for X amount of time? And then just keep repeating that process. Think about it now. If you get your movie into a film festival and it's released theatrically, you maybe have 37 days, 30. Honestly, probably if it's an independent film, more like 20 to be inside of a theater. And that's it. Then it goes straight to streaming and you're lucky to make your money back. And a lot of times, especially if you're selling to a place like Netflix, you're going to be asked to sell away your global rights. So you put it on Netflix, that's it. You can't put it anyplace else. But something that I've seen being promoted by John Reese in his Substack and also some of his presentations is making your theatrical run coincide with your festival run. So the way this works is you get into a festival, you go to the festival, collect email addresses, and also have an event at a theater, contact a small local theater, again, something that's in your price range, and say, hey, for all the people that weren't able to make it out to the film festival, you can see the same movie in this theater playing on this day, which does mean that your marketing budget has to go up a bit. But that means that you get to have a theatrical run. You get to go to all the festivals that you get into, and you also get to have a private screening afterwards. So it's technically not a theatrical run. It's not if you're selling the rights for theatrical. It doesn't count because it's essentially a private screening with some people. But you get to A, probably charge for it, B, collect info, build audience, which is why it's important to start building the audience for the movie early in the process as opposed to later, because then you can use that as leverage. And so just repeat that. Go from city to city. And what it helps, especially when you're making these little events, is tying it into the local film community, especially if you yourself or somebody on the crew is from a particular area. Contact the local newspaper and say, hey, so-and-so worked on the movie, works in the film industry, coming home, we want to see this. How about we do a piece about it? And then everybody in that local community hears about this movie that's coming into town that was made by so-and-so who used to live in the area, and it's a local person, done good type of situation. And especially if you are not shooting in one of the big hubs, let's say, I produced 2 films in Wilmington, North Carolina a few years back, Gabriella and Forbidden Fruit. And some of the screenings that we've gotten are because the filmmaker is from that area and shot in that area. So it's highlighting that particular area. And these are places that don't normally get a lot of attention because they're seen as not important or not doing quote unquote real things. So we're shining a light on not only the issues going on around there, but also how art and film can be created anywhere. So the market has definitely changed. You now have agency. It's a lot more work. It is a ton more work because you are doing it on your own with your team. Hopefully you're doing it with your team. This is why I say that nobody should be trying to make a film by themselves. Maybe you could actually do the production by yourself, but getting it out there and getting somebody to see it, get people to help you, bring people along, form a team. For God's sake, stop trying to do everything on your own. I know that we think with AI and technology we can do everything on our own, but just because we can do something on our own doesn't mean that we should be doing something on our own. Please, even if it's like a small group of 10 people, please bring them in. Please work with other people and be ready to share the wealth. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but I think part of the reason why indie films get a bad rap and nobody wants to work on them is because A, they're not paying anything. So there's that. Even if you have a little bit of a budget to pay somebody, you're not paying them. B, there's not really a strategy for how to actually make money off of this low budget film other than we're going to put it in festivals and cross our fingers and hope we get lucky. This is why going to local theaters is just one part of an actual strategy that will work. So if you bring it to your crew and say, hey, can't pay you a whole lot, but here's our strategy of how we're going to make money, then you can actually get people on board to come work for cheap or maybe even volunteer. The people who worked on your movie sacrificed their time. They probably work between 10 and 12 hours a day away from friends and family. There are other things they could have been doing, but instead they are working on your movie because they believe in it or they believe in you. They deserve a portion of whatever profits that come. You deserve, they have earned your respect. They have given you their time, their effort, their craftsmanship. You owe it to them to A, have a strategy about how to actually make money, B, share it with them. Even if you have crews shrinking down in any case from every budget level. So if you have a small crew of 10 people, just find a way so that everybody can have a share in the equity. I think that's another reason why independent films get a bad rap is because you work on this thing. People say, we don't know if it's going to make money or not, which, yes, every movie is a crapshoot. But at least if you have a strategy, long-term, you can actually start to make some money off of it. But the other thing is that a lot of times when these films start to make money, none of the crew sees the actual benefit. They're like, yeah, I spent 50 to 20 days working for a little money, and what I got in return is I can say I worked on that movie. And not only is that not fair, but I think going forward, you're going to find a lot less people willing to do that because there are movies like Sing and others where they've managed to make it a little bit more equitable. That doesn't mean you have to give away everything. I think it's just a call for us to start thinking about, okay, how can we actually reward the people who have given us their time and their talent in a better way? End of tangent. But I think by focusing on super local strategies, again, building community around local theaters, local people in your area and other areas as you're making your festival run is a great way to get that initial theatrical run, and then you can eventually sell, and hopefully you'll actually have an actual theatrical run. But if you don't, at least you've got to screen it at a theater and not just at film festival, which again means you're going to have to budget some extra money as far as marketing, because obviously you have travel and housing and all those fees to deal with. But at least you can start to build an audience, build a groundswell, and start earning some of that capital that you spent back. Now, the global part, at least the audience that I'm talking to, a lot of you are either from America or you live in America. So we still think that we are the center of the filmmaking world. And we are, for the most part. We are very dominant as far as the film and television industry. Obviously, Netflix is an American company. All the big studios are American companies. So we are pushing our product out internationally. But something that we have obviously, something that I'm sure everyone has noticed, is there are shows from other countries that are having an impact on the global consciousness. Squid Game is a Korean show. It is the most popular show on Netflix. Everybody knows about it. 20 years ago, you probably could not have paid an American audience enough to watch a Korean show with subtitles on. But now it's just the norm. So if we are getting used to stories from other cultures without needing it to be explained or do an adaptation that's the American version, although I've heard rumors that they are going to do an American version, which begs the question, why? But that's a topic for another time. So if we are used to international films and TV shows coming over here, that means other countries will be used to our stuff coming over there, which means you don't just have America to promote to, but you have the entire world. The big mistake that large companies make when they are thinking about having their work go abroad is they think they need to make it culture neutral. They can't do anything that's too specific. They try to just dumb it down so that way you can watch it with the subtitles off and not really have to pay attention. I think that's a mistake, because especially for independent filmmakers, because part of the allure is seeing something that you've never seen before or learning something that you're not too familiar with. And I think if you take the same strategy of coinciding your festival run with having little mini screenings, but also take that overseas, I think that could also help. Again, I'm sure there are lots of theaters and community centers in countries all around the world that would love to screen a movie that is not specific to them. It takes a little bit of research, takes a little bit of work, but I think it is doable. I know Gabriella has gotten into plenty of festivals overseas, even it's a Spanish language film for half of it, but we've screened it in Quebec, screened it in France, so there is an opportunity there. So I think a lot of times we tend to focus on the domestic film festivals and then we ignore the international ones. I think we should pay more attention to the international ones as well, especially if you have something that's not getting into the domestic ones. Again, especially for feature films, I think having that marketing budget being a little bit larger and trying to create a strategy where you can take your film across the US and then take it overseas will help build a global audience because right now the film industry in the United States is a little bit chaotic. I'm not sure where it's all going to land, but again, it's going to be a lot of shows and movies that aren't going to try to offend anyone. At least that's what's going to be produced by the big companies. And small folks like you and I are going to have to think a little bit differently. And I think it's going to be local theaters and taking our stuff overseas. Because if we can't find success because, say, it's too controversial, or even if it rides the fence of being controversial, if it has a hard time in the US, just go overseas and see if you can make it there. This is the old strategy that authors from the 50s and 60s during the civil rights movement, like James Baldwin, had to do. They had a hard time getting their books published in mass media domestically, so they just went over to France and started publishing their work over there and living over there and then having their work come back over here. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go move to France or move to another country, but especially with, again, social media networks like YouTube, you have access to the entire world. Connect with the entire world and also connect with filmmakers from other places. Even if the language is different, the approach is very similar. There's no reason why you can't connect with a filmmaker from Nigeria or Thailand or Germany or France. It's a global market now that we have access to very easily. So I think we need to change the way that we approach the business of selling our films and creating our work. We have to think about how we can tap into what's going on in a local community and just take that same thing and repeat it across the globe. That means being more transparent. That means being more accessible. That means being more communicative. That means being willing to connect with more people. I think the days of the auteur director being in their ivory tower and dictating what they want down to the populace below are fading fast. Obviously, every film has one person who has a vision, and they are putting people in position to execute that vision. And I've seen this, especially with screenings of Forbidden Fruit, that people want to be able to talk to the director. There's two types of screenings that people go to. There's the screenings where you see the movie and the filmmaker just gets asked a bunch of questions about how they made the movie for about 50 minutes, and then they leave, and you just bask in their presence. And then there's other ones that I think are more gratifying, where the filmmaker is there and you're interacting with the audience. The audience is asking questions that you may or may not be prepared for. They have to answer on the fly. So you have to really understand your film in and out. And it makes you think about things that either you could do differently, or honestly, it gives you insight as to what the audience is actually thinking when they watch it and what they think of you. That's what I think we all have to do. Think local, go global. Don't think that we are in a position where we are stuck. We have more agency and power than we actually think we do. And we can live and prosper in an independent fashion. It just requires a little bit of outside the box thinking. So there we go. I will be back in Los Angeles over the weekend. Hopefully I'll get to record another podcast with a better microphone for next week. Thank you always for listening, and be safe. Goodbye.